tonight.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Brianna Kupfer was a graduate student at UCLA studying architectural design. I say was because she's dead. Dead at the age of 24. Killed while simply working at a furniture store trying to put herself through school. Killed by a man accused of crimes that literally span the country, from Charleston, South Carolina to Los Angeles, California. He was out on bond accused of shooting into a car in South Carolina, but the authorities in California didn't notify law enforcement in South Carolina when he was recently arrested. They just released him. And he killed a 24-year-old just trying to work her way through school. Rachel Dowden was waiting at a bus stop in Pennsylvania, waiting to go home after a long day of work. And she was shot and killed by a man ordered by the court to stay away from her. Court orders are no match for a bullet. Michelle Go was waiting on the subway in New York City. She was pushed in front of a train by a man with a long criminal history and mental health issues. She's dead. Killed by a man who should have been in jail or a mental hospital. Tessa Majors was a college student in New York. She was an aspiring musician.
Manifestos. Now, you're of course not responsible for the words of somebody writing that document, but I do think that laughing at it is a real problem because these are real families that are impacted by this violence. And I think our efforts towards talking about this have to start from a place of mutual respect, which is what I've heard from this side of the table. Now, the reason we don't have those numbers, I want those numbers as much as you do. But to say the numbers don't show something is simply not supported by the data.
Okay, and I have 38 seconds left, Ms. Mulligan, if you want to respond within that time.
The only thing I would add is that it's in the name. Terrorism, domestic terrorism, it terrorizes us. It terrorizes us in our homes. It terrorizes us in our schools. And to the points made by the other panelists, it is disproportionate to its impact on any individual life, and it's not.
You reject the idea it's something that doesn't matter or doesn't really matter.
Absolutely reject.
Okay. All right. So here's where we are. Every member now has had 5 minutes. Okay, and Mr. Clay. So we have 2 members who have not. So I'm going to go to the 2 members who have not yet, and we'll give an opportunity for a closing thought to any member who wants before we go.
My next responder is Mr. Meadows.
I thought Mr. Meadows was
Mr.
next.
Meadows, okay.
Mr. Meadows is next, then Mr. Clay, then to you, Mr. Jordan.
Ms. Owens, obviously this is a gang up on you. We're giving these witnesses the ability to do a rebuttal on you. And so, I find it unfair, Ms. Ballou. I mean, candidly, for you to show mutual respect and then you to go after Ms. Owens, it's not appropriate. So, Ms. Owens, you can have 4 minutes and 34 seconds to respond. However, I'll yield to you.
Thank you. I believe, Ms. Owens, when you used the word hilarious, it was referencing the fact that no one had asked you a question. It wasn't to the subject matter of the hearing. Is that right?
That is correct.
And to have another witness insinuate something that is not accurate is just not appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for how witnesses are supposed to behave in front of this committee. I also think you didn't say it doesn't matter about the subject matter of today's hearing. You said there are other subjects that matter as well, and maybe we should spend some time on those. Is that accurate?
That is correct, and they matter much, 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 much more. And I've said that. I said that in my opening, and I will say it again. You know that white supremacy and white nationalism ranks nowhere near the issues that are facing Black America. And the reason that you are bringing them up in this room is because it is an attempt to make the election all about race as the Democrats.
Not in my case, Ms. Owens. Please do not characterize my motive.
Mr. Chairman, it's my time.
It's my time. You've got your time, Mr. Meadows. I'll give you 3 more seconds.
Every 4 years, you bring up race, and you knew exactly what I meant when I said hilarious, and you just tried to do live what the media does all the time to Republicans, to our president, and to conservatives. But you tried to manipulate what I said to fit your narrative, okay? I was not referring to the subject matter that is hilarious. I said it's hilarious that we are sitting in this room today, and I've got 2 doctors and a missus, and nobody can give us real numbers that we can respond to so we can assess how big of a threat this is. Because you know that it is not as big of a threat as you are trying to make it out to be so that you can manipulate. And the audacity of you to bring up the Christchurch shooting manifesto and make it seem as if I laughed at people that were slaughtered by a homicidal maniac is, in my opinion, absolutely despicable. And I think that we should be above that. To try to assign reality or any meaning to a homicidal maniac writing a manifesto, which, by the way, let the record show, also stated Spyro the Dragon, the child's cartoon, as a source of inspiration. He also cited Nelson Mandela as a source of information. I don't think that Nelson Mandela has inspired mosque shootings. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong. You would rather assign meaning to a homicidal maniac than to actually address the things that I said today that are actually harming Black America. Number 1, father absence. Number 2, the education system and the illiteracy rate. Illegal immigration ranks high, abortion ranks high, white supremacy and white nationalism, if I had to make a list again of 100 things, would not be on it. This hearing, in my opinion, is a farce, and it is ironic that you're sitting here and you're having 3 Caucasian people testify and tell you what their expertise are. Do I know what my expertise are? Black in America. I've been Black in America my whole life, all 30 years, and I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows, and now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In congressional hearings, the minority party gets to select its own witnesses. And of all the people that Republicans could have selected, they picked Candace Owens. I don't know Miss Owens. I'm not going to characterize her. I'm going to let her own words do the talking. So I'm going to play for you the first 30 seconds of a statement she made about Adolf Hitler.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. Problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German.
All right, so my first question is to Ms. Kirchhoff. Ms. Owens said, quote, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. So when people try to legitimize Adolf Hitler, does that feed into white nationalist ideology?
It does, Mr. Liu. I know that Ms. Owens distanced herself from those comments later, but we expressed great concern over the original comments.
Great, thank you. So there's been a lot of talk today. I'd like to focus on actual policy responses that our government can do to try to mitigate the threat of white nationalism. I know that in my district in Los Angeles just last month, 2 swastikas were painted at Pan Pacific Park along with the Trail of Blood. I met with Jewish constituents in my district who mentioned that at their synagogues, they've all had to increase security. As you know, there is a nonprofit security grant program at the Department of Homeland Security. Do you believe it'd be worthwhile to increase funding to that program?
The ADL has, for establishment reasons, First Amendment reasons, been very cautious and wary of government funding to religious institutions. That being said, we well understand the fear and the safety. So I think that is something that has to be done very carefully in terms of one entanglement. I know in the place in Westchester County where I live, the state and local governments provide a great deal of protection to the synagogue to which I belong. So I do understand, and I would like to work more with Congress, but I want to caution about where we entangle. This is a very difficult thing to do because when we're scared like this, of course we want money.
So that is a great point you make, and I want to note that this program would apply to mosques as well as synagogues, so it is not specific to the religion. But it is true, the First Amendment does affect all these issues, including, for example, private sector companies to say whatever it is that they want. Now, I'd like to also talk about a second program, and this was one that I asked Ms. Clark about, and it has to do with the Trump administration wanting to cut a very specific office called the Community Relations Service Office in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Can you first explain to American people what that office does and why it would be a bad idea to cut funding?
The Community Relations Service Office is a very critical part of the Justice Department. They are considered the peacemakers. They are the ones who step into communities that are embroiled in the aftermath of a hate incident. They are the ones who you'd want to deploy out to Louisiana, to the parishes where the churches are burning right now. They're the ones that you'd want on the ground right after the Charlottesville hate rally. We are deeply concerned by proposals to cut funding to this office, to shift this office to another part of the agency. It's important that this agency's work be completely non-political, but the very subject matter of this hearing today underscores the urgency of maintaining this office that has been with us for decades.
And in fact, one of the reasons this office has worked well is because people who go there and get interviewed, it is not a prosecutorial office, and does that make it easier for people to provide information?
That's right. They are the peacemakers. They are the ones who go in and connect with communities that are suffering in the aftermath of a hate incident. They connect with victims of crimes and hate crimes and connect them with services. And most importantly, they're the ones who help to ensure that an incident doesn't escalate and lead to more tension. So we need this agency now more than ever.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from North Dakota, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would yield my time to Mr. Reschenthaler from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Ms. Owens, I'm sorry, we just heard a recording. Would you like time to respond to that?
Yes, I think it's pretty apparent that Mr. Liu believes that black people are stupid and will not pursue the full clip in its entirety. He purposely presented an extracted clip.
The witness will suspend for a moment. It is not proper to refer disparagingly or to a member of the committee. The witness will not do that again. Witness may continue.
Sure, even though I was called despicable.
Witness may not refer to a member of the committee as stupid.
I didn't refer to him as stupid. That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. You didn't listen to what I said. May I continue?
Please.
As I said, he is assuming that black people will not go pursue the full 2-hour clip. And he purposefully he cut off, and you didn't hear the question that was asked of me. He's trying to present as if I was launching a defense of Hitler in Germany, when in fact, the question that was asked of me was pertaining to whether or not I believed that whether or not I believed in nationalism, and that nationalism was bad. And what I responded to was that I do not believe that we should be characterizing Hitler as a nationalist. He was a homicidal, psychopathic maniac that killed his own people. A nationalist would not kill their own people. That is exactly what I was referring to in the clip, and he purposely wanted to give you a cut-up similar to what they do to Donald Trump to create a different narrative. That was unbelievably dishonest, and he did not allow me to respond to it, which is worrisome and should tell you a lot about where people are today in terms of trying to drum up narratives. By the way, I would like to also add that I work for Prager University, which is run by an Orthodox Jew, and a single Democrat showed up to the embassy opening in Jerusalem. I sat on a plane for 18 hours to make sure that I was there. I'm deeply offended by the insinuation of revealing that clip without the question that was asked of me. Being insulted every single day. I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable.
and Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee were extremely uncomfortable as Candace Owens just slashed at the narratives of the people like Nadler and Ted Lieu. In fact, when C-SPAN tweeted out the video of the confrontation with Lieu, it racked up 4.47 million views in less than 24 hours. It's a Twitter record for that network. Joining me now in her first interview since the explosive hearing is Candace Owens herself. She's the comms director for Turning Point USA, and Leo Terrell, civil rights attorney. We have both sides represented here tonight. Candace, why do you think that your moment, and I watched it from beginning to end, has drawn such attention, and what has been the reaction to you personally since?
Well, I think it drew attention for a lot of reasons. I think in many ways people on the right felt vindicated. And I know that there were a lot of moderate people that came over and realized that what I was talking about were actually real issues in Black America. I touched upon the illiteracy rates. 75% of Black boys in California not being able to read is a problem in Black America. White nationalism, when Black on Black crime, 90.1% of all homicides against Black Americans are performed by other Black Americans. The entire hearing, in my opinion, was a hoax. The continued hoax on Black America, which comes to us from Democrats who want us ultimately to fail by focusing on something that is not harming us when you look at all of the other issues that we are facing.
Now, Leo, you watched, I'm sure, at least part of what Candace said yesterday. Your reaction?
Oh, well, I just see right now Candace Owens is getting 15 minutes of fame, and just give me 30 seconds to prove my point. She just again assumed that all Democrats are hoping that Black people fail. On her interview with C-SPAN, she says that the word nationalism has been compromised or poisoned by elitists. Tell that to the people in Charlottesville. She then tried to put herself in the same category of Donald Trump, talking about the false narrative. But the part that was so insulting when she's promoting her employer and said that she went to Jerusalem and not a single Democrat went there. Ms. Owens, let me tell you, 72% of Jewish Americans voted for Democrats. So you did a great job of promoting yourself and playing the victim. And by the way, it's not just Black people who were not stupid by what you said. Americans were not stupid because I listened to everything you just said. And I hope you can challenge what I said about the number of Blacks, number of Jews who support Democrats. But you did a good job of marketing yourself today, putting yourself in the same boat as the president. Good job, Candace.
All right. So the personal attack, I just want to, for the record, I just want to say the personal attacks continue. That was you're attacking her character. She's mentioning issues. You're attacking her character and what she said. You're not attacking that.
You're not a leader. In my opinion, don't talk over the guest. Let me speak. That wasn't ad hominem attack and it's childish, and I'm not going to play these playground tactics with you. I'm going to keep the focus on Black America and the things that are actually impacting us. This is an adult conversation that needs to be had. Okay, the shootings in Chicago. It was Laura Ingraham who hosted and had a real conversation with people that were living in that neighborhood about things that are affecting them. And ultimately, this is why the Blexit movement grows. This is why Blacks are exiting the Democrat Party, because ad hominem attacks are not making people feel better about themselves. Ad hominem attacks are not going to impact our financial situation in Black America. It's unfortunate because you consider yourself a civil rights leader. You're just attacking me. You're just attacking me. You haven't actually offered anything that's constructive for Black America.
All right,
does anyone watching your program honestly believe what she just said? I'll give you a straight. She said Democratic Party want Black people to fail. See, those are talking points, Ms. Owens, because you know deep down inside, just because you disagree with the Democrats, you cannot assume that Democrats want Black people to fail. That's what you just said on national TV.
I did, and I believe that, and I will back it up with facts.
Well, okay,
I will back it up with facts. I will back it up with facts.
You know that's not true.
I want to play something
Laura, you know that's not true.
Today.
I will back it up with facts.
I think a lot of Democrat leaders are freaking out and tried to kill her yesterday at that hearing.
They're afraid.
Because they don't want what she's saying to take hold in other parts of the Black community. Leo, I honestly believe that. I know Candace, and what was said about her implied by Ted Lieu was disgusting. I do, and that's why I want to have a conversation about these underlying issues. That's why we went to Chicago to do that forum. That's why we want to hear from the neighbors that are hurting in Englewood, in the Englewood neighborhood. They're hurting. They're really hurting. And they're not hurting mostly because of of black of white nationalism. That's always going to be a problem. But that's not really why they're hurting.
Here's my request. Here's my request, Laura. I would like to go to Chicago with you and debate Ms. Owens on that issue. I would love to go.
Why do we need to debate? Why don't you want to hear? Why do you want to debate?
Because I
Why
want to
don't you
hear the
want to go to hear about other people? You want to debate. That's like why don't you want to hear from the people that are
the most diverse
I made an
party,
attack. I
the
haven't
most
said.
diverse
I have
party
not said
in the
one thing
Democratic Party
against you
of
whatsoever.
minorities.
Hold on.
Let me speak.
You said
I have not said.
Hold on.
Let me speak. Let me speak. Let me speak. I have not said a single thing attacking your characters. I don't need to. I am confident in my ideas. I am confident in the fact that Black America is waking up and realizing that we have been missing out. I am confident that the biggest issue facing our community is father absence, which further deconstructs everything that has happened. Stop cutting me off. I didn't cut you off, okay?
You have
I have not attacked you once. I have not attacked. I have attacked Democratic policies.
Member of this country.
Democratic policies are hurting Black America.
Every Democrat. Every Democrat. She has basically said that every Democrat, the most diverse party of minorities, of people of color, she has just said on national TV over and over again that the Democrats want black people to fail. Ms. Owens, that's not true. Those are your words. That's not true.
Leo,
That is not true.
Leo,
that's a fact.
I would actually take what Leo said with a greater sense of belief and credibility. Had Leo, you said something similar every time a Nita Lowey or a Elijah Cummings just imparts the worst motives on people who disagree with them on policy, and it happens far too often. So the worst motives ever come on the other side. Are you a white person? Then you have too much white privilege. Then you need to sit down and let someone else's truth be heard. I think Leo, you got your truth out. You got your truth out. Candace got her truth out. And I think we do want to have problem solving done on both sides. We want problem solving on the show, and that means we have different points of view heard. And Leo, you can come to Chicago. Candace, we actually could roll up our sleeves and get something done. I think if the three of us actually wanted to do that. So, guys, thank you very much. Candace, great to have you on. Leo, great to have you on.
Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. Fireworks flying on Capitol Hill this week between conservative commentator Candace Owens and California Congressman Ted Lieu at a hearing on hate speech. The exchange becoming the most viewed C-SPAN Twitter video for a House hearing ever. Nearly 6.8 million views watched the whole thing.
I don't know Miss Owens. I'm not going to characterize her. I'm going to let her own words do the talking. So I'm going to play for you the first 30 seconds of a statement she made about Adolf Hitler.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. Problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German.
Ms. Owens, I'm sorry. We just started recording. Would you like time to respond to that?
Yes, I think it's pretty apparent that Mr. Lieu believes that black people are stupid and will not pursue the full clip in its entirety. He purposely presented an extracted clip.
The witness will suspend for a moment. It is not proper to refer disparagingly or to a member of the committee. The witness will not do that again. Witness may continue.
Sure, even though I was called despicable.
Witness may not refer to a member of the committee as stupid.
I didn't refer to him as stupid. That's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. You didn't listen to what I said. May I continue?
Wait, please.
As I said, he is assuming that black people will not go pursue the full 2-hour clip. And he purposefully he cut off, and you didn't hear the question that was asked of me. He's trying to present as if I was launching a defense of Hitler in Germany, when in fact, the question that was asked of me was pertaining to whether or not I believed that whether or not I believed in nationalism, and that nationalism was bad. And what I responded to was that I do not believe that we should be characterizing Hitler as a nationalist. He was a homicidal, psychopathic maniac that killed
killed his own people. A nationalist would not kill their own people. That is exactly what I was referring to in the clip, and he purposely wanted to give you a cut-up similar to what they do to Donald Trump to create a different narrative. That was unbelievably dishonest, and he did not allow me to respond to it, which is worrisome and should tell you a lot about where people are today in terms of trying to drum up narratives. By the way, I would like to also add that I work for Prager University, which is run by an Orthodox Jew. Not a single Democrat showed up to the embassy opening in Jerusalem. I sat on a plane for 18 hours to make sure that I was there. I'm deeply offended by the insinuation of revealing that clip without the question that was asked of me.
Wow. Here with the reaction, Communications Director for Turning Point USA, Candace Owens. First of all, Candace, congratulations on the engagement. We are all very happy for you.
Thank you very much.
Let's see the ring.
Okay. I've never done this before. Now everybody has seen it in the world, right here on Waters World.
There it is. There's the debut. All right, well, first of all, nice performance up there on Capitol Hill. I know it could get a little crazy, but everybody tuned in for it, and it was just bananas up there. So nice work getting your point across. I do want to read what you said, and then you can explain just how this guy, Ted Lieu, is taking it out of context. You did say, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is, he had dreams outside of Germany. And so everybody's latching on to that comment. What was the context there?
Oh, it was a 2-hour discussion, and what we were talking about in various parts was about globalism and nationalism. And the woman who had asked me a question basically said, nationalism is now viewed as a very dirty word. How do us patriots sort of reclaim that word? And what I was responding to her is that the reason why it's considered a dirty word is because it's wrongly conflated with Hitler, when Hitler was not, in fact, a nationalist. Now, if I had known that this clip was going to be pulled 3 months later from BuzzFeed on a hunt to try to put something nasty about me, I would have been much clearer in my response. But it was over a 2-hour course of a conversation. I was basically just saying that Hitler was by no means a nationalist. He wasn't focused on just Germany. He was killing the German people. He was a homicidal maniac. So what Ted Lieu did was an incredibly dirty trick, and in my opinion, it undermines not only the American people, but especially Black Americans. That entire hearing was about how there's a looming threat in Black America.
Right, and you made that point about how he thought that Black Americans weren't smart enough to find the full context, and the chairman Nadler didn't even know what you said. I don't even think he was paying attention. One of the problems is that whenever you use Hitler in an analogy or bring him up as a part of an argument for argument's sake, it always is then seized upon by political enemies or people that don't even understand the context, and then it's used against you. So I would never, if this is just my advice, I would never bring up Hitler at all, ever, in a political context, in any sort of debate, because it's never going to go well. So I just don't do it. And I think you probably know that by now.
That's really good advice. I obviously learned this lesson the very hard way. It's probably good advice, but the other side of this, though, is that it is bizarre now. It's one thing when they try to do this to white people and try to paint them as white nationalists. I am a Black female, okay? It's very bizarre to try to paint me as someone who would support Hitler, right? So, and I agree with you, and now I'll never, because they're out to get me all the time, I'll be very careful in how I describe things. But it does also showcase to Black Americans how desperate the left has become, how desperate Democrats have become when they're trying to smear and libel a Black American woman as someone that would ever support a homicidal maniac that murdered 6 million Jews. So in that way, it kind of helps get out what I'm trying to teach them, which is that Democrats use racism, sexism, and anti-Semitism as themes to simply go after their political opponents. They do not care about any of us.
Yeah, it's kind of just gross that Ted Lieu would accuse a Black woman of being racist or a white nationalist. It doesn't even make sense, but he's not a really serious person, in my opinion. He's a strange person. But he's always just trying to create controversy. He's a radical partisan, and that was a stunt that he pulled. That was a cheap stunt that he pulled, and he thought it would work.
Tucker Carlson, tonight, about an hour from right now, and we'll carry it live, Joe Biden will deliver his first address to a joint session of Congress. He'll be making his way from the White House to the Capitol shortly. Now, the early excerpts, the short ones we've seen of this speech, amount, in effect, to a mushy casserole of cliches. They're designed to calm your suspicions that anything weird or scary might be going on in the country, and to reassure you that everything's going to be fine, just fine, in fact, better than it was. In that way, it has the same narcotic intent of the Biden campaign itself. Remember that? Don't worry. We're moderates. We'll make everything normal again. Whatever you think of Joe Biden, that turned out to be one of the greatest lies ever told. In 4 months, this White House has changed America more quickly and more radically than any before it. They have moved so fast and with such stunning aggression that even people who are paid to keep track of it, like us, can barely keep up. Every change they have forced has moved the country in the very same direction, away from democracy, where every voter has the same power as a voter, and toward something very different, toward tyranny. Most ominous of all, and this is the hallmark of tyranny, they have not hesitated to use the force of law to punish their political opponents. Here's the latest example, and it may be the scariest. At 6 a.m. this morning, federal agents raided the home of former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. They seized his personal property, including his electronic devices, which include all of his digital communications and records. Before they did this, the feds notified their allies of the Democratic Party's campaign operation, the Lincoln Project. The Lincoln Project then bragged online that they knew this raid was coming. Now, you may have thought the Lincoln Project was done. We told you that, in fact. We believed it was permanently discredited by a child molestation skin, which they admitted. But it wasn't. Under this administration, the Lincoln Project is stronger than ever, strong enough to know about an FBI raid before it happens. And of course it's stronger because the Lincoln Project is an ally of the White House, and so by definition, they can do whatever they want, and they do. But Rudy Giuliani is not a political ally of the White House. In fact, he was the personal attorney of the former president, whose communications, by the way, the feds are, of course, reading right now, tonight, as we speak. And in the end, that was Giuliani's core offense, being Trump's lawyer. That and having the gall to try to learn more about what exactly Joe Biden and his son were doing in Ukraine several years ago. The Justice Department announced today that asking too many questions about the Biden's dealings in Ukraine is effectively a crime. They called it something else, but that's what Giuliani did. What's interesting is the one electronic device the feds didn't seize, the FBI did not take in today's raid, was a copy of Hunter Biden's hard drive from his laptop. Giuliani had a copy of that in his apartment. At one point, agents picked it up and looked at it, but when Giuliani told them where it came from, that it came from Hunter Biden, they put it down, and they left it there. It was the one thing they didn't want. And that's very strange if you think about it. The Justice Department is now telling us that Giuliani was somehow involved in foreign tampering with our democracy. Russia, by implication, was involved. So you'd think they'd want to examine Rudy Giuliani's own copy of Hunter Biden's laptop. Why? Because Hunter Biden himself just told us on television that that laptop, that hard drive, could be tied directly to Russian intelligence. You know, the fake Russian laptop with all the photoshopped pictures of Hunter Biden smoking fake Russian crack with those fake Russian hookers. So why wouldn't the FBI want to see Rudy Giuliani's own copy of that? Well, you'd think they would, because as Joe Biden told us during the October debate on TV, Joe Biden himself believed that Rudy Giuliani was a pawn of Russian intelligence.
We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, well, I won't gush him, but I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true.
Oh, he's being fed information by the Russians, by Russian intelligence, by Vladimir Putin. So if Rudy Giuliani was working for the Russian government, as the now President of the United States claimed in public, you would think Biden's Justice Department would want all the Russia-related evidence it could get from Rudy Giuliani's apartment. Oh, but they didn't. That's not what they wanted. Instead, they told Giuliani they had a search warrant for all communications between him and, among others, a journalist called John Solomon. If the name sounds familiar, John Solomon often appears in Sean Hannity's Hour right after this one. So why are they interested in John Solomon? Well, we don't know, but here's a guess. At one point, John Solomon's reporting uncovered the fact that a key figure in the Mueller investigation, a Ukrainian businessman called Konstantin Kilmenek, was in fact an informant for the U.S. government. Now, that was an essential fact to know, but Robert Mueller did not disclose it in his final report. Instead, he portrayed the Ukrainian as a Russian agent. Now, that was a lie. It was a lie by omission. And that lie helped prop up the whole collusion hoax. John Solomon exposed that lie. And it looks like the Biden people haven't forgotten about it. Now, the FBI's pretext for investigating Giuliani, all these things have a pretext, is that he violated something that no one in America had even heard of a few years ago, called FARA. That's the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It's been around an awful long time. For 50 years, a total of 7 people faced criminal charges for violating FARA. Only 1 was convicted. In fact, the U.S. Attorney's Manual at the Department of Justice said that you should warn lobbyists who don't comply with FARA, not prosecute them, warn them. Most violations were ignored. In fact, they still are ignored. It's extremely common in Washington, and it's not Russia that people are lobbying for, but they're treated as civil matters. That all changed when Donald Trump was elected. FARA investigations became a tool that the DOJ used against mouthy and inconvenient Republicans. There have been more FARA prosecutions in the past 3 years than we've seen over the past half century. These are process crimes, and they've been weaponized against political opponents. Political opponents of permanent Washington, and particularly of the Biden administration. Roger Stone would know he's got a PhD in that subject. Roger Stone has never been elected to anything. You could argue he's never wielded profound political power. But he has been a long-time informal advisor of Donald Trump. And in 2019, for that crime, Roger Stone was arrested on the grounds that he'd lied to Congress about a subject that honestly no one now can seem to remember. What were the details? Nobody knows. It was that insignificant. And by the way, the context is this. Lying to Congress? It happens all the time, like roughly every day. And sometimes it gravely hurts the country. James Clapper, for example. He was the former director of national intelligence. And he lied to Congress when he said that the NSA was not spying on millions of Americans. The NSA was, in violation of our constitutional rights. He committed perjury. No problem. Brennan, the former CIA director, lied when he said the CIA wasn't spying on the U.S. Senate. Can you imagine an intel agency spying on the legislative branch? That was happening. He lied about it. Another case of perjury. And yet here's the interesting thing. Neither Clapper nor Brennan was ever prosecuted for perjury. In fact, both got better jobs. You can see them on TV tonight, collecting their paychecks from the networks. Why did they get off? Because they're on the right side. Roger Stone, by contrast, advised Donald Trump, and here's what happened to him.
Exclusive footage you're looking at right now from CNN as the FBI arrives at Roger Stone's residence in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, taking him into custody. They arrived before dawn there, before 6 a.m. or just after 6 a.m. A dozen officers were told.
A CNN exclusive. Well, CNN was tipped off to that raid before it happened. Imagine a country in which the Department of Justice, men with guns who can literally shoot you and get away with it, use the American news media for political purposes to hurt you before you've even been put on trial. That's corrupt. And what you just saw on television, that clip, that's one of the most grotesque displays of corrupt justice to happen in this country in our lifetime. In the end, Roger Stone got a presidential pardon in the final moments of the Trump administration. But the story wasn't over for him. The harassment continued. The Biden administration has now announced that they are suing Roger Stone for non-payment of interest and penalties on his taxes. He's paid the taxes, not an easy thing, when his prosecution left him unable to work, when the judge in the case said he couldn't even speak in public. He was completely broke. Stone paid everything he owed. He was negotiating a settlement for the penalties and the interest. He was negotiating with the government, as many do. And then the day after Joe Biden was inaugurated, the feds pulled out of the negotiation and went after him publicly and sued him. Roger Stone is broke. They've wrecked his life. But guess who's doing great these days? Can you guess? Oh, Hunter Biden. And it turns out that Hunter Biden has tax problems too. We know that from his laptop. It indicated that he may have taken millions of dollars from Communist Party officials in China. The question is, did Hunter Biden pay taxes on that money? The Justice Department at one point was wondering that too. They had a criminal investigation into Hunter Biden's tax question. But you haven't heard a lot about that investigation lately, have you? That's weird. Or maybe it's not so weird, because on Inauguration Day, Joe Biden named a new head of the criminal division of the Department of Justice. That man is called Nicholas McQuaid, and it just so happens he was a law partner of Hunter Biden's defense attorney for years. Funny how that works.
Under McQuaid's leadership, the feds have become more aggressive than ever in using the force of law to crush political dissent. In the leaks to the media, for example, the feds announced they were investigating Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida for the crime of sex trafficking. You could read about it in the New York Times. They told the New York Times, which dutifully wrote an entire piece about it. That piece essentially destroyed Matt Gaetz. It took him completely off the map as a rhetorical force. Whatever his flaws may be, Matt Gaetz is smart, he's articulate, and he's brave. Matt Gaetz was one of the very few members in the entire Congress who bothered to stand up against permanent Washington on behalf of his constituents. But you're not hearing much from him now, because Matt Gaetz is a sex trafficker. So the question is, who exactly did Matt Gaetz sex traffic? Well, we can't answer that question because no charges have been filed. So all that remains is the stigma. The remarkable thing is, and we're almost getting tired of these contrasts, but here's the most vivid. There is apparently material on Hunter Biden's laptop that suggests Hunter Biden was involved in the sexual abuse of minors. Now, if that's so, the FBI would know it, of course, because they have a copy of the laptop. And yet, here's the funny thing. No one has leaked anything about this to the New York Times or Politico or NBC News. Hunter Biden has not been charged with this, not with sex abuse. He hasn't been charged with the federal firearms felony that he committed. We can say that conclusively. He lied on a background check. He committed a felony, a federal firearms felony. So is he going to jail? Oh, no. He's thriving. Hunter Biden got $1 million book contract, multi-millions, we have read from Simon & Schuster, and then he got a gig teaching at Tulane. So it's good to be the president's son. You know who it's not good to be? It's not good to be a Trump voter. That's very clear now. Watch this partisan federal prosecutor, man who's completely out of control, explain on television that Republicans who so much as trespassed at the Capitol on January 6th will be treated like Al-Qaeda.
After the 6th, we had an inauguration on the 20th. So I wanted to ensure, and our office wanted to ensure that there was shock and awe that we could charge as many people as possible before the 20th. And it worked because we saw through media posts that people were afraid to come back to D.C. because they were like, if we go there, we're going to get charged. We wanted to take out those individuals that essentially were thumbing their noses at the public for what they did.
Okay, that guy's a lunatic. He should not have power. But more to the point, what he just said is the opposite of justice. In a just system, you punish people for the crimes they committed equally with everyone else who has committed those crimes. You don't punish some people extra to send a political point, or to deter future behavior that might inconvenience a political party, or to stop a dissent. And that's exactly what he did. That's not legal, by the way. A district court judge, Christopher Cooper, just released one man who has been in detention for 4 months now. That man, a 60-year-old named Richard Barnett, had made the mistake of entering Nancy Pelosi's office without permission. He didn't burn it down, he didn't hurt anybody, but for that crime, for trespassing Nancy Pelosi's office, he was locked away in solitary confinement. There, he was allegedly beaten by prison guards, including a guard who told him that he hated all white people. Now, Judge Cooper, who we should tell you is an Obama appointee, had to inform the Department of Justice this week that Richard Barnett, though you may not like who he voted for, still has rights in a constitutional democracy. And so Barnett was finally released from jail, thanks to the judge. But that case was not unusual. Barnett was one of more than 36 protesters from January 6 who have been held in solitary confinement at a D.C. jail for months now. This is so disproportionate, especially considering the people who torch buildings, including federal buildings, and rape others, and commit gun crimes, and rape, are getting out of prison in a day. This is such egregious treatment that Democrats in the Senate, including real lefties like Dick Durbin and Elizabeth Warren, actually said something about it. Quote, solitary confinement is a form of punishment that is cruel and psychologically damaging, Elizabeth Warren said. Elizabeth Warren. And we're talking about people who haven't been convicted of anything yet. Well, thank you, Elizabeth Warren. You may be wrong on everything, but you're right on that, and bless you for saying so. In a functioning democracy, every member of the Democratic Party would be saying exactly the same thing. Republicans would be saying it too. Where are the Republicans, by the way? What does Mitch McConnell do for a living? Hasn't said much about this. They've been silent about this egregious abuse of human rights. In a functioning democracy that cared about justice, there would be demands for the immediate release of every nonviolent protester who went to the Capitol on January 6th. But there aren't. So the White House will likely lock up more people it disagrees with. Just today, we should tell you, Victoria Tenzing, who's been a guest on this show many times, former federal prosecutor, a serious person, an attorney of 50 years in the District of Columbia, had her home raided by federal agents and her electronic devices seized. Why? We'll tell you when we know.